My opponent brings up the following contentions in their argument against the resolution. First, reparations will cause an economic depression and destabilize international relations. Second, that it is difficult to identify which African Americans receive said reparations. Next, my opponent states that my tax subsidies for upper middle class African Americans are problematic and will cause economic depression. However, I would like to refute all these points in my argument because my plan invests back into the economy and dismantles the inherent legacy of Jim Crow slavery in the South, thus effectively addressing structural oppression towards African Americans. My opponent states that in order to allocate for these reparations, we will need to cut from educational funding and defense spending. First, my plan calls for an investment in educational programs, therefore cutting educational spending would not make sense and would not be necessary as it contradicts this part of my argument. Second, my opponent states that cutting defense spending will destabilize international cooperation and relations. However, I disagree, and I believe that if we are to allocate for these reparations, defense would be the best place to make cuts. The United States military budget, which totals $601 billion, is outlandish and is more than the total of the next 22 countries combined. According to the Brookings Institute, defense spending and conflicts have added trillions of dollars into our national deficit. America's hyper-ruled policing has increased taxes, and we are still paying off war debts and continue to cripple our economy. Reeling in on our military presence in the world by cutting defense spending will be better for our economy and, in fact, not destabilize international relations. Reducing the military presence on the borders of other sovereign nation states will only help foster more positive international relations because it will make America seem less hawkish, making the world a more conducive place for diplomatic conversations and peace talks. Next, my opponent points out the difficulty in identifying who gets these reparations. However, I define African Americans using the same guidelines as the U.S. Census, and thus they are eligible. Next, I would like to reaffirm my argument on the strong historical precedent of reparations. My opponent argues that African American oppression is not unique and that other minorities have contributed to America's rise in power through their labor. However, their labor was not exploited to the same degree. African Americans, on the other hand, were essentially treated as poverty and received no compensation. No other minority group in America has been affected to this degree. The Chinese, the Irish, and the Italians were all compensated for their labor and were not invisibilized to the degree that African Americans are today. Lastly, there is a stronger net benefit and positive impact that comes out of my proposal to mitigate any economic harms, such as increased taxes and racial division that my opponent brings up. My proposal works in twofold. First, it provides housing vouchers and educational investments in poor black communities, while providing upper middle class black folks with tax subsidies. Now, investing in housing vouchers is a powerful way to address structural racism because it revisits one of the legacies of segregation. Additionally, it creates more economic stability in African American families, in turn giving them access to better opportunities and public services and goods. This is good for the economy because it builds a stronger workforce. Secondly, I propose giving tax subsidies to upper income bracket African Americans because they are not qualified for housing vouchers since they are economically well off. However, tax subsidies will provide them with more expendable income. According to economist Charles Whelan, decreasing taxes and practicing expansionary fiscal policy will allow consumers to buy back into the consumer market, mitigating a potential recession due to robust economic activity.